This is where the location of the bridge is going to be. Currently, it's an 8,200-foot span that may be increased. We are in our core permit process, and we may reduce some of our fill and increase the span of the structure. But right now, the bridge is 8,200 square feet. It's 14,000 feet from one coast, one shore to the other shore. And then we have the connector roads, which go through the Port of Anchorage. This is Port of Anchorage. This is actually Elmendorf Air Force Base. This is a high security, secured radar facility or communication facility for the base. Port of Anchorage, Ship Creek, and then downtown Anchorage is here. And Port McKenzie is on this side. This is the Mat-Su-Burroughs port is primarily a resource port. This is primarily a freight port. Population growth. There's one thing you can say, it doesn't really matter what numbers you go with or what curve you look at. Alaska's growing. It has been growing. Will continue to grow. It's a very financially stable state. We have resources. We have opportunities. We are growing. The projections, 50% in the next 20 years, another 170,000 people. Out of the 170,000 people, a good majority of that is in the Anchorage, in the Mat-Su area. So the 170,000 is kind of a circle around what I call the south central Mat-Su Anchorage. And they're coming whether the bridge is built or not. And the bridge will provide opportunities for business, residential, and industrial space on the west side of the inlet. This is what it looks like from Port McKenzie backward to Anchorage. This is what Anchorage looks like in the fall. A gorgeous day, sunny day. If you've been up there during the summer, you know the sun never sets on us. Why would, actually one of the questions is why would folks move out of Anchorage? Well, Anchorage currently has less than 3 square miles of available land for development. The Anchorage Bowl area is on a tip or peninsula surrounded by the Chugach Mountains. And so we're very limited on what we have for available land development. 20% privately owned in the Mat-Su, close proximity, and as I said earlier, it's in the top 1%. It's growing. Housing, of course, is supply and demand. The housing market in Anchorage has been increasing over the years, just based on supply and demand. Families now can move to Wasilla and commute, and you basically can get twice as much house or twice as much land. So it's affordable for them to look at the Mat-Su-Borough. Other benefits, statewide. Okay, and one thing is not a bridge from point A to point B. Although it connects the municipality of Anchorage and the Mat-Su-Borough, it's actually a project that has statewide significance. $715 million is what our estimate is for the new infrastructure. This is phase 1, and I'll talk a little bit about that. 5,000 construction-related jobs, another 5,000 indirect jobs over the course of 3 to 4 years. The reduction in freight costs is about $326 million over a 10-year period. And that's just from the freight leaving the Port of Anchorage. And as I said, all of Alaska's freight basically comes in by water, comes into the Port of Anchorage, and goes north from there. Currently, the freight comes into Anchorage, goes all the way around, and goes up by Connect Glacier, through Wasilla, and then north. This bridge will significantly cut down the cost of freight moving north to Fairbanks and to Prudhoe Bay. In addition, just the commuter time, this includes not only time value, but also fuel value. It was interesting, our price of fuel in Alaska is still higher than the price of fuel here in New York per gallon. So, it's fuel is a significant cost to our consumers. And then, not very often do you have a project like this that also has a really good green component. And the carbon emission reduction is estimated at about 90,000 tons over the first year of the project. Provides an alternate corridor out of Anchorage. Right now there's only one highway going out of Anchorage, and that's the Glen Highway. So for those of us who live north of Anchorage, we know that on any given time in a month, the highway will be closed for an accident. Somebody hit a moose on the highway, snowstorm, ice storm. The highway is typically closed once a month, and when it closes, you can imagine one of your highways around here, if you put a stoplight on it, what would happen behind it. And that's what happens, and then it takes a while to clear it. If we had a natural disaster, such as another 64 quake or something, and we lost any of the bridges on the Glen Highway, which are all old bridges, the other communities along the Glen Highway from Anchorage to Wasilla would be cut off from any services also. Provides for a state transportation system. This is a toll authority. This is a toll bridge. The money generated from the tolls will be used, one, for the bridge itself, but it will also be used for infrastructure throughout the state. The revenue from this will more than likely go into a transportation fund, and it can be used for Title 23 type projects, which can be used from Barrow to Unalaska, which is on the Aleutians, down to Ketchikan, which is our southern tip on the Panhandle. Can be used for bridges, roads, airports. Can be used for boardwalks in some of the village communities. Can be used for a marine highway system, even to buy a new ferry. Also provides access to connects the Port of Anchorage and Port McKenzie, and there isn't any competition. You know, one of the things is, you know, if you develop this, we'll take away from the Port of Anchorage. The Port of Anchorage is a freight. This is where freight comes and goes from Alaska. Port McKenzie is a resource port. This is where they have done a test case for running coal out of there. They have run timber chips out of there. They have brought in cement from China into there. So Port McKenzie is more of a resource port. And in fact, the state, if the governor signs the existing capital budget, there's $37 million in that budget for some rail expansion on that side. So even without the bridge, rail is coming to Port McKenzie. We also have a correction facility that is 81 miles with the existing road structure, is 12 miles with the bridge. And this is one of the state's new correctional facilities. The savings in the first 10 years is estimated at about $30 million. Here are the two ports. Port of Anchorage, as I said, is freight. 85% of the Alaskans with 90% of the inbound freight. And Port McKenzie, as I said, is a resource port. Primarily, the rail extension will be for coal, future limestone, other type resource developments that the state has, what we call in the rail belt corridor. We've done several polls just to, as the project progresses, and many of you have been interested or involved in this project for the last 4 or 5 years. A lot has changed in the last year. You know, we have a record of decision that we obtained December 15th. We have legislation in place right now. There's been a lot of support. This project's moving forward. We are moving into right-of-way acquisition. We're having this conference. We're presenting this, and I'll go over this a little bit more, but we have an RFQ that's coming out soon. You know, as the governor says, we're open for business, and this is one of our businesses. 75% of the Alaskans support it, 6% can't quite tell, and about 19% says, you know, we really don't want it.